It is 2:05 p.m. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Luanne Hook.
Jennifer Davila.
Britt Hornsby.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson, serving as town manager.
Then the order that we have right now of 1 through 11, we're going to move number 10, presentation of the draft signage ordinance from planning and zoning, up to number 1 due to timing issues. And so is Amanda Podmore on? Yes. Hey, Amanda.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Does everyone have a copy of the sign ordinance? Okay. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and council folks, for letting me present today. We're really excited to share the draft ordinance that we voted to recommend to you. And I just wanted to walk you through a couple really quick high-level things that are new from how our sign regulations are currently written. So the first piece I wanted to point out was we've added an intent and purpose to the sign ordinance. And in that, we really tried to capture well the need for attractive, informative wayfinding signs within the town for economic reasons, but also balancing aesthetic, like the aesthetic look of Bluff, protecting dark skies, things like that. Next, I'll point out that we beefed up the definition section, noting in the past we needed more clarity around definitions of waving signs, banners. We added things like kiosk, murals. So you'll note that is a much more comprehensive definition section. Then we added, I'm going to jump to the end and then get to more specifics on the signs. We added an enforcement section because this, we recognize was a challenge across town. And so generally speaking, we have copied the enforcement language from the zoning code. It has not seen a legal review by Chris McEnany. I've asked for that, but it's not been something he's had time for. But it is pretty much verbatim what we see elsewhere in our ordinances. The key things in the enforcement section are that if you have a sign violation for more than 30 days, the town can take action such as denying you a certificate of occupancy, obtaining an injunction, or imposing a civil penalty of $100 a week. So just something to think about with enforcement and what you think about that. So then I just want to go over a couple specifics on like the bigger changes you have seen in there regarding signs in the town. Generally, we made it so that most commercial signs in town will need a building permit. The last sign regulation wasn't really clear, is super clear on what size triggered a building permit, but generally now it's most signs need a building permit.
Building permit or sign permit?
Sorry, sign permit.
Sorry. Thanks, Amanda.
I just wrote an email about building permits, so my mind is.
I saw that.
Yeah, sign permit. We added like a maximum height for a lot of the signs because that was something we hadn't discussed in the past, but that's pretty standard in other towns to not allow like a 180-foot sign waving around. We heard a lot of feedback about the importance of like A-frame sandwich signs that folks put in front of their business, potentially in the right of way. We added language allowing those to be in place during operating hours or during business hours. One of the biggest changes you'll see is we explicitly allow for, we recommend allowing off-premise signs. So that means your business could have up to 2 signs on a lot separate from your own lot. However, as written, we've proposed capping those at maximum 30 square feet. So that's about a 5x6 off-premise sign. So something for y'all to think about. The sign ordinance is written still prohibits anything resembling the square footage of a billboard. So, and then generally speaking, we removed the cap, the maximum cap on the amount of total square footage a business can have for signs. That was really kind of universal feedback we've been hearing for years, that cap wasn't realistic with advertising and wayfinding needs of businesses. So we still have proposed caps on the size of signs, but not your total cap on total square feet. Another big change I want to flag, pun intended for you, is that generally speaking, for sign, like maximum square footage of a sign in a commercial zone, we've recommended increasing that from 40 square feet was what it was to 86 square feet. And the reason we have come to that 86 square foot max sign size for a commercial sign is based on this mathematical code that's recommended by this national sign safety organization. And so Malia did some really incredible math work for us where she calculated that based on the speed limit in town and having about 20 letters per sign, the recommended signage for 40 miles per hour in our town is 86 square feet. Now, if we were to change the speed limit in town to 30 miles per hour, I know that's something we've wanted. It's really hard to achieve. That change from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour changes their recommended max size of a sign from 86 to about 48 square feet. So something for y'all to consider as town council. If you want to consider a maximum size for commercial signs, it might be something that scales depending on the speed limit. As written, we've recommended 86 square feet maximum for signs in commercial zones. I think those are like the main changes I want to notify you of. So, it still limits like waving banners, temporary signs to 14 calendar days a year. That's not a change that we did not decide to make waving banners something that could be put up permanently. But besides that, I think those are the biggest changes I wanted to make sure y'all were aware of for when you discuss this ordinance internally.
Does anybody have any questions about the sign ordinance? So I'll start. Were you able to address the question we had about the size of signs for construction, like we'll have to have for the federal government? I've skimmed through this a couple times and I didn't see it, and I don't know if I have a new version or a past version.
We did. It is we put it under like municipal signs. Now I'm trying to find it.
And I may have missed it, Amanda. I just was looking at it again. And
it could be that.
okay, wait, I found it on, looks like page 3A, exemptions.
Yeah, 5.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Municipal signs, including temporary signs.
So and we use that language to cover all municipal signs, not just any construction grant related signs that the town is responsible for.
I could have swore I saw it in here earlier, Amanda, something.
Yeah, under general regulations, A, exemptions, 5 municipal signs.
So, do you think it would be a good idea in our discussions and changes to add a definition for municipal signs?
Sure. We didn't do that because it was a last minute addition, so
Yeah.
we could add.
Sorry, we got that last minute request. That's why I didn't know if it was in there.
Well, under the exemptions, it's number 5. municipal signs, including temporary signs,
Right,
are exempted
yeah, that's what
from
we just,
getting a permit.
that's what we
Ann
just were
wants to-
talking
Yeah,
about.
so like, what do you wanna change to
Add a
that?
definition of.
No,
what-
add-
Oh, what it is and what isn't.
Yeah, in the definitions.
Right. I mean, I could see a lot of scenarios where municipal without a definition could get us into trouble. So I think,
Different locations or something?
well, I don't think we need to go through my bad
No.
scenario list, but I think we can work on that. Does anybody else have questions or thoughts on this?
The only question I have, and I'm going to take this from like a 30,000 foot view, I see, Amanda, most of this ordinance is specifically regarding like sign sizes and then their relation to the zones. With the exception of realtor signs, are there other types of signs that are designated? Because I don't know if we're allowed to put restrictions. We can say, yes, you can have this type of sign, but no, you can't have this type of sign. And I just wanted to know, I see that realty signs are in there, but are there other references to specific types of signs that could get us into trouble legally in terms of how we're regulating these things?
Are you talking about the First Amendment?
Specifically, yeah.
So great question, Erin. We did some research on First Amendment rights and signs, and we actually in the intent and purpose cite a legal case that basically says you can't limit expressions of free speech and ideas on signs unless they're like vulgar in nature. And so we took any sort of limitations on, like you'll see the very last row in the table is yard signs, and there's like no restrictions on those because that comes down to free speech.
Gotcha. And then,
But what about the
yeah, that was my
Speak-
question. How do realtor signs work? Can we regulate that specific type of sign, or do they just have to fall into the zone and the size?
I think, this is just my recollection, was there in the realtor sign, is there a section that says that the sign must come down within X number of days after the
10 days
contract?
after sale completion.
Yeah, so if it has that, certainly, Chris hasn't done a review of the whole thing, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so we can send any other questions like that to Chris and have him give us advice, but I think, for some reason, I think realtor signs are more informational than advertising, kind of, they're just providing data. But let's let him weigh in on that.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Sorry.
and
No.
they're, right now, what has been recommended is 12 square feet, so that's 4 foot.
3 by 4.
3 by 4, well, it could be 4 by 3.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
could Look at the other way,
Sure.
but,
But
Or
there's
2 by
some that
6.
are exceeding that right now in town, I'm sure.
yeah, that seems,
But
and if you're,
Can you shut them down? That's, I think that's a good question.
if it's in a commercial zone, should,
Should just
Should-
commercial,
yeah.
Yeah. Is it just a commercial sign?
which is the commercial sign, I would think, but anyway, good question for him. And then, Amanda, I've sat through all these, meetings, but on the size, and, I talked about the speed limit and whatnot, but the one, sign right at the fort, I was wondering how big that is, so that we can all compare the size of that. And I don't know if anybody knows, but I would hope that somebody could measure it so we have an idea how many more of those we want in town.
When Bob was doing, this is not the Fort sign, but when Bob was doing the review of the draft ordinance, Jared Barrett brought up the sign, the new landfill sign, which is a 4x8 sheet of plywood essentially. And it is, in a lot of, at least a lot of people in that meeting's thoughts, and I've felt it myself, it's very difficult to read because the font is pretty small.
Yeah, you have to know it's there, they almost.
So if you didn't know it was a landfill, then
Right.
you wouldn't know it was a
But that's
landfill.
65 miles.
Right,
an hour
right.
going by. And, the smaller your signs, you gotta slow down, look at them, right? That would slow the speeds.
Or, well, If you're looking for something specific, yes, but if you're just flying through town and, oh, well, there might have been a restaurant there that I would have stopped at, but I couldn't read the sign. So it could go either way.
So I know that Amanda has timing issues with going to another meeting, so specifically for Amanda, are there other questions?
Amanda, were there any changes to the sign permit application that planning and zoning might have made changes to based off of the recommended changes to the ordinance?
The only change we would need to make if the ordinance is approved as is adding a section to the sign permit application about off-premise signs. We would require that both the lot owner and the sign business owner would sign that building permit, or sign permit, so sorry, sign permit.
Gotcha. Thank you.
They sign your approval.
Anybody else? Hey, Amanda, thank you so much, and thank Planning and Zoning for the work.
Yeah, thank you all too. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Good luck with your meetings.
You too, thank you. All right, then the next one is the discussion of the need for a capital improvement project, and then the transfer of funds to the PTIF, the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund. Erin, could I have you cover the capital improvement project piece?
Yes. All right, so we do have some funds. They were earmarked, they would be surplus funds from years past. Funds cannot just sit in savings for a municipality indefinitely. We need to make a plan on how we use those. It is okay for a town to have a surplus. That is not a problem. We're still have a balanced budget, but we do have funds that could potentially be used, and we should create a plan if we have surpluses in the future. You know, how would we choose to use those funds for larger projects? And so this actually dovetails really well in with the strategic plan, and that's why it's coming up here in March. It's actually in our strategic plan to look at in March 2024, so we are on target. Great job. But I would like us to start, and you know, certainly we've got a lot to go through today for all of the agendas, all the meetings, so we don't need to get too much into the weeds as to what we'd like these projects to look like, but I would like to encourage the council to start thinking about what kind of projects would fit in with our strategic plan. I think some of it's actually very spelled out, and we just need to identify how to prioritize those. But it would be very helpful to start that process. What I have proposed, in your agenda packet, you'll find a capital project prioritization matrix. And this is just a very fancy way to help us put quantitative assignment to projects on how we best use the funding. And so this particular one is a template that is based on actually Moab's capital improvements, their matrix. And to be quite frank, what it says is we're not just picking a project because it's, you know, touchy-feely and makes the community great, but we are thinking about what is the return on investment, what is the risk analysis if we do or don't do this project, does it fit in with other projects, and in order to make those successful, we must do this project. And so it's weighted, there are points assigned to it. If we think that this is too much, we can pare this down into something a little bit more simplistic. But I do think it's important that as you discuss projects as a council and as you hear feedback from the community, that you're able to base decisions on a holistic view of how we prioritize those. So that's kind of the document that you have in front of you. And then on page 2 of that is just kind of a very, very, very high level what would be the project description, how it's prioritized. I think it's important to identify what category it falls into, and when I talk category, I have some examples pulled directly from our strategic plan. So would it be for community health and safety? Would it be for affordable housing? Would it be for active transportation? And that way you've got a good high level view of, you know, are you addressing the whole strategic plan? Are we really focused on, you know, one or two sections in the early years? And then another piece that's important for your capital improvement project plan when we develop this is to have a future view. So what is the estimated cost over, you know, certain years? Some projects we can start on and start expending money, but we know that we'll need more in the future. Some projects we won't even be able to get started on unless we're fully funded, right? So you say, okay, we're saving this amount for the next 3 years in order to do our big disbursement in 2028, for example. And so the second page is a little bit more straightforward of saying, what's the project? How much does it cost? How much are we either saving or spending year over year to accomplish that? Again, I don't think we have time to really go through a ton of projects today, but potentially in an upcoming work session, we can start doing that. And then to note as well, I think it's important that you know, the public was very involved in the strategic planning process, which is phenomenal, but you are going to, we have to host a public hearing to get feedback on the proposed plan before it would be finalized. So if that can go in conjunction with another public hearing, that's fantastic. And then that is the template that you will then use to expend money for larger projects. Again, just to reiterate, it's not an issue that we have a surplus. It won't be an issue if we have a slight deficit. But we can't just sit on money and savings. There should be a plan to use it for the public benefit. I will say the council up until this point has been fantastic at managing their money. There have not been any crazy things that would put them in a very risky situation, but we can certainly continue to keep that I'll use the word conservative because it is a conservative way to manage your money, which is probably what people want to hear, that the town is not just spending money willy-nilly, but we can definitely optimize some of those funds towards this huge, wonderful list of strategic initiatives that the town has put forward. Are there questions about the process that we would go through to develop this? I also did include the state auditor's checklist on how you actually do the fund and everything, but high level, we're gonna get a list together, we're gonna prioritize it, we're gonna figure out the budget year over year.
So would it make sense to throw out a few ideas now and then set a work session with a public hearing date, backing it up so that we've got it on the calendar? You know, just as a reminder, we are moving into where we all need to be talking about the budget and the amended budget. And with the EPA grant possibility and everything else that's happening, we probably need to do this sooner rather than later in order to keep the time free in May and June for the budget crunches.
And that'll help us to develop the budget if there is anything that you all choose to target for this coming fiscal year.
Well, certainly, in my mind, given where we are with the Cooperative Cultural Center, that should be a capital improvement project. In what way, I don't really know until we get into, you know, past that EPA funding and how we use the $445,000. But that's not going to bring us, let's say we use all the funds we have in the 1.6 million. That may move us in, but it may leave us sitting in rooms that look like utility rooms.
That is a huge gap, so, and kind of just in the sense of trying to get the building online, you all saw today, UDB has money to spend. We have not earmarked anything for ourselves, including furnishings, like cabinetry, any of it. There is a $20,000 cash match for the state grant that is not specified how we use it. I mean, in theory, it should probably go towards some of those common spaces, but it just says it'll be used on the building. So there is a definite $20,000 coming out of our general fund at some point over the next 2 years. for this project specifically, but then past that, no, nothing else has been earmarked.
So is that where we build in a, kind of an efficiency for the manager so that she can just sleep there?
You can put that under affordable housing.
Right, well, and that was one of the things when we
Cross-functional.
were looking at the school was a live-in manager to keep track of the building and the.
Wait, did this actually come up?
We did, oh,
my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, it totally did,
Count
because it
me
would be
out.
an apartment and a manager that would keep it, do the cleaning, whatever,
Oh my goodness.
all the maintenance and keep it,
Jeez.
keep the
I might
safety
apply.
factor and keep it monitored, but that came up when we were first discussing it.
Oh my goodness.
But, and it would be another place for somebody to live.
That's true.
Take
Job
space
creation.
away from program development though.
It does,
Yeah.
yeah.
If
it
you,
just-
depending on how we end up dividing that building, I don't really see where we have space to take away from program development that we've already kind of committed ourselves to.
Unless it's somebody that opens the door and lets people into those things or.
Yeah, but even, yeah,
The other,
put them in the portable.
the other project that I think we need to keep in mind is the airport. The airport, maintenance and improvements that the state does 90% and we do 10%.
Yeah, so you touched on a good one. So airport, so general maintenance, like annual maintenance, we keep that separate. But yes, those big projects like that potential repaving project in 5 years, yeah, that one would have to go on here, if you wanted to move forward with that. But yeah, generalized maintenance, and that's a good point in general, just for any of these projects. This would not be like chip sealing a road, right? Like that goes under roads and
Mhm.
maintenance. If we were, I don't even want to say what I'm saying, but like if we were putting in a new system of some sort, insert that system that we don't already have, that could be a capital improvements. If we were building an additional building or an addition or something, that's capital improvements. But maintenance and upkeep is going to be in a separate area.
So if we wanted to explore secondary water, for example, then
That would be capital improvements. Yes. Exactly.
And I'm a big fan of keeping it focused on what we're working on and not getting too wide and spread.
Other things as we were going through the strategic plan that would be good to include?
Well, whether we really want to talk about it or not, I think we've got emergency services coming at us from the county. And I think what we really need to be looking at is what if the county does what it's has done the last couple of years where, oops, Bluff, you're taking on addressing, Bluff, you're taking on issuing the building permits and doing inspections. And the big one, you're gonna take on emergency services, and we're not going to be able to sell you or give you the equipment that you need. And that kind of ties into the CIB piece of it. I think we need to be setting something aside for equipment, whether it's EMS type of equipment or whether it's road, just basic road and building maintenance. We now own this building, West Park, Barwell, which no one ever wants to talk about, the CCC, and we might be able to get some help from the CIB, but we also, given the last few years of CIB behaviors of granting money, are coming with some loans.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the wet blanket on that, but it's really hard to have somebody around that can maintain equipment, maintain a tool shed, keep all that stuff. Then you don't have the tool you need, and they're expensive, and the machines and the operators, all of that is expensive. And if you hire that out, then they keep their equipment going. So I worry about that one.
Well, I think that it's a fair worry, but I think the EMS is coming at us sooner rather than later.
Well, and have you priced the fire truck, or, and, I mean, we'd basically be out of that service, because we wouldn't, our town can't afford that.
And so that's part of the discussion we have to have, is looking at what people are suggesting and giving them priority. like for me, if we're gonna talk a little bit about that 5-year plan on the airport and the amount of money versus the use that we have of an airport right now really makes me edgy. And so I think we have to be really honest about what's the amount of money we have that we're looking at for capital improvement projects. What is the priority, taking in mind what is the need? Is the need more to buy a backhoe to do something, or an ambulance? And I think we just have to have those discussions. So, anybody else want to throw out a project, and then maybe we could, next Tuesday I could bring dates of kind of work sessions for the next couple of months and the public hearing.
In regards to water rights and things like that, I think that we are probably closer in jeopardy of losing our secondary water rights than we are our culinary water rights, because we don't have a system in place to utilize secondary water rights right now, being water that could be pumped out of the river and isn't. I think there's some big diversion projects coming up. I think it would behoove us to look into something like that.
Which kind of gets us then to that elephant in the room. We don't
I know.
maintain
I know.
water, you know,
I
we may
know.
have the water rights, but now.
Well, but I think that maybe secondary water rights might be something that's different than culinary water rights. It would certainly take some more exploring, but.
Okay, so,
I think actually water rights are water rights, and the reason they're called secondary is because culinary you have to be really careful with so that there's no kind of contamination or anything, but secondary you can use for gardening and other things. And we started working on this in 2001 when I was on the BSA. We looked at diverting it from the river for gardening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, I don't think we're
Well, I
going
think
to
that those
lose
are
it.
probably shares, and this is something that we need to look into, but I was under the impression that Bluff had a number of acre feet shares that could be allocated to secondary water. Of course, we're not going to drink the water that comes out of San Juan River. I mean, it's just, no. You know, I mean, but if we could pull shares out of the river like other communities do, you know, for example, my orchard in Mancus has shares of rural water that comes out of the Jackson Reservoir, and we get 4 shares, whatever those shares are, every year, and that's water that's diverted straight out of that reservoir that is solely used for agricultural. It's that those shares don't have anything to do with your town water system, with your culinary water system. It's shares of water that are in the river. And if we do have those shares and we're not acting upon them, the chance of losing those shares of being diverted from the San Juan River to a project further south or something to the, I think that's where a lot of water movement is happening right now, is proving up unused shares that have been allocated. I don't know, it's just, if we're looking at exploratory projects, I think that would be a valid one to look at.
And I will tell you, it comes up multiple times in our strategic
Yeah.
plan that we discuss water rights and how we best execute on them. So I think it's completely valid to look at that.
And just for back history, and I don't have the dates and stuff, but when we made the capital funds project, or capital improvements fund, the big push was open space, parks and open space. And I think that's what it was dedicated to originally, was like, we can put this in because we're saving it for open space and parks. And I think that's a viable, or an important one still, with
Comes
the
up in the
Sitla
strategic
land,
plan a
yeah,
lot.
the Sitla land, you know, any green space, any travel lanes for wildlife or people, either one. And I don't know if we have that somewhere that we need to carry on, that is still kind of earmarked for that, if we
You
take
know-
it off the list, or if it's on the list.
Some research needs to be done because an individual did bring that up. that if it was earmarked for the BSA and we took on it, I don't know. So we need.
I think I know the answer to the question. The answer is we do not, but I will confirm that with our attorney. We have been
Yeah.
down this path 4 and 5 years ago ad nauseum. Down that path, so
And not to
let
say
me
that that
confirm
is
it.
not something we can't
No,
focus
I
on,
just,
but
what my memory says was, and I remember Brant specifically, but my memory says it was $30,000 that we put in there. And we put it in for open space, and it's been sitting in
Yeah.
hopefully the PTO.
Yeah, I will confirm that money earmarked by the BSA for the use of the BSA at the time does not require us to use it for what BSA earmarked it for or transferred it
See,
to us for.
I don't remember any of that going into capital.
No.
I remember our
Yeah.
town funds going
Those
in.
two items got linked
Okay,
by a particular individual.
okay, well, that's,
So, let me
my
just,
memory.
let me just confirm that. But I think that's the purpose of talking about capital improvement plans, is that you may, it's like the CIB list. You're on the CIB list and you just keep moving around with your need till they get to someplace where you have the need and they want to fund you.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what we're doing, I think.
great place to get started. I so appreciate it. I think keep looking at the strategic plan, see if there are any like very concrete things that we could accomplish, but then we can start building budgets around this. Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, we can move to,
Just the
the PTO.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
yeah, so,
Number 2, 3.
to me, that dovetails right into what you're saying, like, is that money in the PTIF? Is the 30,000 that is it in a PTIF making some interest, or is it just still floating in the general fund?
So there's been money that's gone into the PTIF, but I don't know, I don't recall if we put money in when we opened it and then it's been the deposits or not.
Okay.
So that's something we should look at. But Erin, can you, my recollection, and this, it may be faulty, is about 100%, we can hold up to about 100% of our budget year funds, but we shouldn't be holding more than that. And we should have this capital improvement plan. So, I don't think I put this on, the transfer of funds in the PTIS, so I,
It's been,
I had questions about this.
Okay,
So,
good.
when you look at our financial reports, it's showing quite a lot of money in just our general checking account. And I was curious what the actual amount is in our general checking. We won't even get into roads. Roads is another thing. But if there is more, I would say, than $100,000 in general checking, I would suggest that we move some of that funding into PTIF. The current interest rate for PTIF is 5.48%, which would be substantial if we need to move stuff over. So typically, according to our accountant, I mean, I know it's a process to move things back and forth. I think it would be reasonable to keep a couple months of expenses in general checking. I think, for each municipality it looks a little different. Dave says most of his keep it, $10,000 to $20,000 in their general checking. We've had some big projects recently that have created some additional expenditures. But what I'm curious about is our financials say a dollar amount, but what is in our checking account right now?
We only have 117,000. When we initially did it, Dave recommended that we put in what we put in, and so that we wouldn't have to make transfers back and forth. We are a lot lower right now than we usually are, because we've had all kinds of expenditures. Usually we're at least, maybe 100,000 more, but we are pretty low. So I haven't called yet to find out why they had a different number, but it's only 117,000, which in my opinion, we need.
So we only have one account?
No, our general fund account, the general fund
So
account
the
has
general fund
100,
has that, and then do we have any other accounts?
roads and acquisition development.
Okay, so how much are in those?
Roads is about 144,000, acquisition is 141,000. We really can't move things, in my opinion, in and out of acquisition and development.
That
That
one
would
can't
be a really huge red sign for audits. And it's better that we don't move things unless we had a big lump sum like Erin's saying.
So if
So
we leave
if
the-
it's as low as we're saying, let's make sure that our financial report is updated to reflect that. And Linda, I know you and I have been talking about it this week.
Yeah.
Because if it was the amount that's on the financial report, that would be
Yeah,
an issue to not get interest on that. But if it's not that amount, then yes, we need enough in our enough in checking to operate efficiently and not having to transfer money all the time. But let's get that cleaned up so we've got a better idea of our assets, and then this will be important moving forward just on the same topic of if we've got these big capital expenditures, how does that move in and out? I think that also leads into like bookkeeper and other things like that, but those can kind of be continued conversations.
Yeah, I think when we get into May and June and start doing amended budget and budget for 2025, some of this will be clearer as to the path we have to take, I hope.
So what I see is that we have over 250 that's movable on the two accounts that, if we don't want to move to acquisition, I understand that. We leave
I
that,
wouldn't
but,
necessarily do roads either.
No, I
Well,
wouldn't.
roads, but when I set this up early on, when we explored this whole thing, what they said was that most towns do 4 accounts. You do a general fund, a capital improvements fund, a roads fund, and what was the other one? They said 4 was sort of the standard. So you have, like the roads fund people, $150,000 is quite a few thousands to buy signs and whatnot, just on the interest that it makes at 5%. And I looked back through to 2000, they've got the rates on it clear back to 2002, I believe. It's never lost any money. There's never been a loss yet on the treasurer's investment fund. So there's no risk. It's just, you put it in. It's just like on your phones when you transfer from savings to checking. You go in and you take it, you keep those separate, keep the general fund separate. You have a list of checks that you approve. You write that amount and you move that if you want, or you keep the
Dave-
10,000, but you can keep the 10,000 in there. We don't have more than that. If you have more than that, then you've already approved it and you do, I don't know, would it be 10 minutes to do that clicking? It's not a
it doesn't take
big,
10 minutes. I mean, there's so many steps. And
is it
our
too much?
accountant and Larson, in the research I've done, you don't move things back and forth like that. We do get a tiny bit of interest on the other checking accounts, but it's a big red flag to be moving monies back and forth like that. And unfortunately, it's much easier for me to look at roads and say, oh, this is what we have. And once, Michael starts getting his projects going, typically roads is approximately 55,000. Right now, we got kind of a bonus from the state, so it's higher. But once Michael starts setting up projects, a bunch of that money is going to be used.
Well, that's the thing with roads is you've got to do some matching grants and things, so you've got to kind of save it aside. But if you had this 144, if we could pay somebody to move that back and forth, because the roads don't come out very often. The road fund doesn't come out very often. 144,000 in the checking account for the year we've lost $79.20 at this rate, $7,920 at the going rate. So we can pay somebody to spend 2 hours to move it if it takes.
No, the audit, when we do an audit, they wanna know exactly who does
Okay, well,
each
that's
thing,
fine.
and we can't just grab outside people
But
and.
how do you justify not getting $7,920 interest for the road department to add to their budget?
I'm happy to talk to John Hatterley and, or Dave, or both.
Okay, well, I'd like to
But-
be on the call.
But moving things back and forth, I mean, yeah, you made 7,000, but now we have a big red flag for audits. Why are you moving money back and forth? Because you're talking about moving it more than once.
You can
You
put
don't.
it in there, you can put it in there, because we don't pull roads funds money very often at all.
So, it's not, what you're talking about is not a part of best practices.
Well, let's,
And
So
best
I do disagree, unfortunately. So the whole purpose of these PTIF funds are to safely manage municipal funds. They are a safe place to build interest. And if you've got the accounting system, which we do, which records the transactions, as long as they're not going to some third-party checking account, if it's going to our municipal checking accounts, I don't think it's an issue. I agree that we don't want to increase the workload significantly. No, there should not be transfers, in excess of, I don't know, 2-3 a month. But I think putting money in, and this is the same thing for our general fund, that if we have more money in PTIF, we can pay for the bookkeeper, we can pay for the note taker, we can pay for these positions that you need paid positions for. Because the folks in the room here, we can't keep doing all of it.
So why don't we do this? We have a fundamental disagreement as to how to do it. Let's start, first of all, with discovering exactly what amount of money is in what fund. Lou and I need a meeting with Michael Havocan anyway. He did recount to me several projects Michael has on his mind for the next few months. So get an idea of what that looks like. Take a look at that point, what we're doing. Erin, maybe you and I can look at what is at the top of your list for the 2025, just ballparking, so we have an idea of where you're coming in on dollars. And then we can bring this back and have that discussion. In the meantime, either anyone who would like to call Dave Sanderson, please, I think at this point, please do not call the auditors because that makes them really uncomfortable.
No, so-
But I think talking to Dave Sanderson, any one of us can pick up the phone. Just keep in mind, he's to the point. So ask your question, he's going to answer it and then hang up.
So
So,
let's plan a meeting, like you and I can call the accountant and figure out what his worry is, and maybe massage your worries on the red flag of the audit. So
I'd
I
also
can
be
on-
curious too, is that something Dave can help us with? We pay him a significant amount every month to do our accounting. Is that something that he can assist us with?
Yeah.
I do transfers.
Okay.
I mean, the two transfers that we've made.
Well,
I
let's
do
find
them.
out how many transfers before your red flag flies. So that you're
Or-
not, because there's no reason for you to be worried and to be stressed.
okay, what time? We've got a really long
Yeah.
agenda.
But-
See if those people who would like to be on the call, as long as there's no more than 2 of you at a time, to talk to Dave. And Erin is correct, we pay a nice sum of money, although it's not like we're Salt Lake City, but he's always willing to give us the time. So let's get the answers to the questions and then get it back to the table.
So maybe Erin schedules a call, and then
Sure.
I would like to listen in, but I think Linda, you should be listening in too, so we can schedule.
Yeah, I think the three of us, I will set a time probably next week. We'll find a time for all three of us to meet.
But yeah, it's 7,900 just on
We're good.
roads, and
Okay.
if you keep that in every year, multiplies. Let's see. So, the other concern that I had that I'm not sure is on here, but it's the same process thing. The treasurer welcome Jen, to the job. In our little book here says that the treasurer should sign all the checks. And then we agree that we do a second signature for our purposes, so that 2 people have signed it.
Are we moving to number 5 then? Because we've got checks on there, which is now number 6.
Okay, all right, we'll hold that part.
Okay, thanks, Lou. Make a note, we're going back to it.
Yeah, that's fine,
All right.
unless you want to bump it up.
Well, since it's kind of a protocol thing, let's just look down to it, because it also involves the absences out of town. So next is the discussion on changes to Fire Mesa kitchen rental contract by adding an hourly rate component and conditions of use. If everyone remembers, we voted a few months ago to go pretty light on letting the Cow Canyon Coffee Shop be able to use the Fire Mesa kitchen until they got set up and everything was like up until the end of March. It was April 1st when we said we would have the discussion about a fee. And part of that was in exchange for the fact that we didn't have a food handler's license or management person, and we were going to submit our permit under them, and which we did do. We haven't gotten the permit because San Juan County doesn't have anybody to issue them, but I believe Malia filled everything out that we needed. And we used, we had Hannah, well, we had 2 licenses. So now we're at the point of, do we want to amend the contract? And do we want to go an hourly component, or what do we want to do with the, with somebody using it fairly consistently when we don't have other rentals?
It did come up from another business, asked me what was available. So it's kind of an in-demand thing, the hourly thing. To me, it has to be somebody that can clean it to where we don't have to follow in. So with the food handler's permit, the commercial kitchen use, if they can clean it, I think that's kind of an awesome use for the community.
Or they have to pay the cleaning fee.
So we have the contract, the possible contract that Malia came up with the coffee shop people, which actually, it might be a good contract if we were commercial. We are not a commercial business. This might work for commercial business. I don't think it works for us. We have a community kitchen that is commercial, and so it would be really hard to follow this, or the amount of time it would take to schedule, to enforce whether people were bringing food they had started outside. It would be really difficult to do. When I looked at our current contract again, if someone rents a full day, which is 15 hours, it's $140, which 40 includes the cleaning fee, and it comes out to $9.33 an hour. If somebody, we decided they have the proper things that they need to clean it, or if we waive the kitchen fee, it comes out to $6.67 an hour to use it all day. They're actually using it today all day. And for the half day with cleaning fee, it is $100 an hour, which works out to $20 an hour. I think if the other problem is, if we could have 3 or 4 people who want to do this, which means you're scheduling a lot, which is a good thing. So we have to keep it kind of simple. In my thought, I think we should keep what we have. I mean, if the cleaning ladies have more than a handling permit, I believe they have a manager's permit, which might allow us to waive the cleaning fee if they are keeping it clean. They also need, and everyone else needs to take everything out when they're finished. They cannot use that for storage because of cross-contamination. So my idea is to keep what we have. We have given them a break for 2.5 months to work out what works for them. And they could easily take a whole day, make whatever they need for that week or for 2 weeks, and then if they had a freezer at their place, put their things in their freezer, which is where they are right now, and it would be workable for us, it'd be workable for Malia's scheduling.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying, keep the current contract as it is, don't do hourly, and say if somebody wants it for half a day or a whole day, charge the rate we're currently charging. And if somebody has a food manager's or a food handler's permit, they could ask to waive the cleaning fee if they cleaned it themselves, and no overnight storage.
Especially if they were using it frequently. So a one-time user, maybe they just follow the whole contract, but there are people in town who might use it frequently, but yes, that's what I'm saying.
We were having the discussion when we were talking about letting somebody use it, and one of Patricia's comments was different people have different ideas of what is clean.
Yeah.
So I think that if I were to rent the fire kitchen and somebody else had been using it fairly regularly, and Patricia hadn't gone in there or something to come in, and you go in and, well, no, this isn't clean. So I would like to see some kind of, so for me, that kind of eliminates, you have like 4 different renters at different time slots in the day, because who has time to go in and clean that? But I could foresee that, oh, well, it's not being used from, so-and-so's got it from 10 to 12, but it's, somebody else has it from 12 to 4 or whatever. But I think if we get them stacked up on there, I could foresee a cleaning problem. I don't know.
So if we didn't do an hourly and we just said, it doesn't matter whether you want it for 1 or 3, you're renting half a day, they make that judgment call. Do I want to use this for an hour and pay what I pay for half a day? I kind of like the idea of keeping a cleaning fee on there, because that concept of what's clean and what isn't, we're dealing with public health permit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody doesn't, if somebody doesn't, for example, believe in using bleach, but they've just cut chicken all over the countertop, and now I'm coming into a kitchen that I think has been cleaned and sanitized. Has it been or has it not been? I mean.
I cut chicken up wearing plastic bags on my hands because I don't like to touch it.
Exactly.
But on
That
the
would
other
just
hand,
freak
if
me
you're
out.
a commercial cook, you don't assume anything's clean. You clean it before you put your food there, if you're coming into a fresh place. So, and they, if there's somebody that's routinely doing it, a monthly rate for an occasional use person, and there's somebody who's not cleaning it, then they're like, sorry, you're back to the old contract, and you pay to clean up.
I don't know who I told this to, but when the inspector did the inspections of Fire Mesa Kitchen and the CCC, the use of the refrigerator by the current person using it that day, the food was layered inappropriately. So the foods that could drip and cause contamination were on the top shelf versus the bottom shelf. I did not know those things had to happen. And so the meat products were on the top, and the eggs and stuff were kind of, so again, to make the assumption that if they have that licensing, they're going to follow it.
It's
I'm
real
sure
easy
most
not
people
to.
do. Yeah, most people probably do.
No, it's
But-
real easy not to also,
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're in a hurry and you just go and throw it in because it's gotta go in the refrigerator, but.
But that's,
So-
it's, to me, what this goal is to help some of the small businesses. The big businesses aren't gonna need it, but help the small businesses to get a little, an extra place without having to build the whole, it's like that incubator thing that you were describing. It's basically a little incubator, so you can go there, you can use it, you don't have to have your standalone kitchen and invest yourself. You can use what the town has invested in.
So what would you propose?
I don't know exactly the amounts that would make sense, but it seems like, in the subscription, I'm not seeing exactly what a subscription is, but like a monthly,
That's the, yeah, package.
you know, we talked about that with the community center. If you're a member and you pay a certain amount per month, and then you can schedule in your times up to 10 hours or something for a certain amount every month, and then you're a member of the kitchen, you can use it until you're booted. It just seems to me like a community service, just like opening this up and letting somebody play basketball in here or whatever. It adds to the community and adds to the use of this thing. Otherwise, it just kind of melts into the ground.
Could we do that and include, you know, maybe just by, you know, every 2 days or something, somebody has to go in and clean it real well? I don't know. I mean,
Well, like I say, if they're not satisfied with the one before them, they either tidy it up because it's such a great deal and it is a shared space. And if there's somebody who's not cleaning, then they're no longer a member.
And now we're down to enforcement.
Yes,
Who's gonna
so,
enforce it?
Well, plus it's, you know, in my opinion, it's supposed to be temporary.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
the
that's
people that use it, some of them use it to make fry bread and do, you know, do family things or sell it. And I don't think we want to be part of this business. I mean, the
That's-
ideal for the ladies, and I don't know what their goal is, but to have their own. The goal for me is not to have this be permanent. So for a temporary fix for them and someone in town, their business has their oven go out and they need an oven, I mean, this works. The original one works.
Yeah, it's awesome if it works for your business model, we're not commercial space, like fully, and this will end up being, like, I like what Malia put together, but it's a little too far. I mean, it felt like it's solving problems we don't necessarily even have really yet. Too detailed, where I kind of agreeing with Linda, especially since it's a split use thing and not meant to be a business incubator, like fully. Like, it's just awesome that they were creative enough to make the community kitchen work for their business.
I mean, it kind of is when they sell stuff out of there for fairs and it's a commercial, you know, made it a commercial kitchen. So they
Well, I mean, it
could.
can be a commercial place, but I'm saying it's not like to be used commercially on occasion, as opposed to being like this idea of being set up to help businesses all the time, like a staff or businesses that have infrastructure elsewhere in town. Like, I don't think that was what y'all were intending, was it? Like, I thought what they were doing is clever and unique way to work around
Well,
for their
there's been
situation, as
other
opposed to us adapting this to accommodate businesses that need that situation. See what I'm saying?
Where more people are realizing that there's this facility here, there are more people that are saying, hey, I could use it for X, Y, and Z. So we've had other requests for the same thing, and I said, hey.
And
this good.
is there anything in the current contract preventing them from doing what these guys are doing? Like, are these guys hogging it in a way that contract doesn't work, the existing contract?
That's what I don't know.
Because to me, it's like, well, yeah, then let them have a stab at it and like do exactly what these guys are doing with the existing contract. And once we've got 3 of those happening and there's, conflicts everywhere or whatever that will arise, no matter what contract, we can get into more of this detail. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
who has talked to them to find out if this is working? Like, would this be a reasonable fee that they would continue to use it and we get the use back to the community, or?
When you say this be a reasonable fee, are you referring to
The-
the one that Malia did or
No,
the current one?
The current one. Like, is that an amount that
It
makes sense?
works. You know, I'm the one who works with Malia and keeps makes all the deposits and keeps all the applications. And I've never had anyone question it, or have a problem. So,
But like the businesses, they think it's a fair amount, like, do they have any issue? Like, are we fixing this for us or for them, or?
Wait, so are you asking specifically about the coffee shop?
Yeah, them, and they're typical of a couple other that would like to do similar things. So,
Well,
are they happy with this?
I don't,
it's not based on whether they're happy. We pay Malia a lot of money to schedule, we pay Pat a lot to clean, and we've got utilities, insurance, water. So we have to base it on some, I don't expect, I would like to break even. I don't expect to make money at this point, but this has been doable for, X number of years.
I think that if anybody cannot absorb a half a day rental fee of $60 in the food that they are selling, if that's what they're truly trying to do, that they're not going to be successful in a lot of other things. I don't think $60 for a rental is an exorbitant fee.
I know, it's pretty cheap, that's why I'm wondering, are we dealing with a problem that we don't have?
well, no, because we do have the problem, we've got this cutoff date, and what do we charge them going forward? That's the problem.
Was the initial request, was it phrased in a way that, hey, in order to get us started, we would like to ask for waived fees? Or was it, hey, in order for us to have a successful business, full stop, we would like waived fees? What was the original request?
My recollection, which don't always go on it, was that it was temporary until they've made other arrangements. And one of the arrangements was there was another spot that they were looking at that was closer to them geographically to be able to use. I don't think it's a good idea to base it on this particular business. I think it's really, like, it's an enterprise fund. We're not expecting it to make money, but where are we? So maybe we should just table the discussion and take a look at what we've spent, what's coming in on it, and then say, are we breaking even? And does this contract work? And if this doesn't work, what does? So
I think this is fine, I think the original is fine, and I guess let them, anybody who, if this is available to people, available to businesses. I
Well, and
think-
as I love that you broke out the hourly rate, because yeah, full day rental, that's actually really inexpensive.
$6
Yeah.
So like for utilities, for water, for
Yeah.
like, I'll move in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but say that's the,
Why was this in there?
and that's to,
You
and
guys
that,
are ones I thought about, like, you could maybe hire somebody one day to stockpile us up.
No,
And
like-
it's a,
That's a great
And
rate.
okay.
and I'm for helping people, but like Linda said, it's gotta be somewhat uncomfortable, cause it's not meant to be the
Yeah.
cornerstone of your business
Right,
necessarily,
right.
so.
and
Can I
we'll
get
have
some
the
of your-
same issue at the old school with that big old kitchen, people are gonna want it.
Yeah, you could unplug me.
Well, I think there's an extra plug.
Do you need it too? You can unplug me, Jen.
I think there might be, I think there's an extra plug in on that.
Well, thank you.
Just one brief thing, is they're kind of using it now as needed, and this would make it so that, okay, well, they're gonna rent it that day for that many hours. That would make it a lot easier so that we don't have people that, thought they had rented it and someone, so that would
Well, and we
simplify.
don't have 8 keys that are spread all over the place because X person might need it here, but, I mean,
Well,
And a lockbox maybe for our.
It's like you jumped in on that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Pieces
Yeah,
over
that-
here. No, that's
yeah.
exactly what we're thinking is a
No.
lockbox.
and I asked Malia to look at the CCC too, to put one in there, because this worked well for me the very first day after we did it. I left my keys at home and had to let somebody in. I just want to remind everyone that the purpose of the contract, in part, is to track the use, so Malia isn't out there and finding out that I told somebody they could use it temporarily, and then she's got a renter that's reserved it. It's also for the purpose of us keeping track of the rentals, so that if we apply for a grant, we know what our use is. And that's part of the justification of those funds, the $2,000 we get a year from San Juan County. Like, how do we use funds? So I think we need to have a contract of some kind, whatever we agree upon.
I think it's also important because right now we're talking about this commercial kitchen, but we're about to have another commercial kitchen to manage as well.
And I will be out of
Which
this
has
office by
more
that time.
equipment and more, you know, I mean,
Yeah, so I think we can, try to figure out some numbers and look at it, but
I think we stick to this till we have a problem.
we have a problem, Lou, we've
Well,
got
I mean,
people
just
in
say
there.
we're reverting back to this. If you wanna keep using
Okay.
it, you go to this.
Okay,
And if that becomes some issue and nobody comes, or it gets used too much, you raise the rate or whatever. But I'd say we're good. Keep the original is what I would be inclined to do.
and I think that thanks Linda for doing the hourly breakdown, because I think in doing that, you can present, look, this is only $6 an hour.
Yeah, no, it's very reasonable. Because I hadn't seen it for a while, I popped that up. It's very reasonable.
okay, so number 3 would require much more time than we really have, so I'm gonna take the cemetery and ownership management issues off this work session. And in part because San Juan County, Mac McDonald has not gotten back to me on when he needed to, so I'm gonna move that. But I will say we're making progress on the cemetery, so. Number 4, which is number 5 actually, discuss request by San Juan County to shift issuance of building permits and inspections to the town of Bluff. So, the first conversation that this came up in with Kristen Bushnell, who's now the head of planning and zoning and permitting, was that it was an issue of shifting the issuance of the building permits to the town, and that San Juan County was getting a new program that would allow the town, and probably Monticello or Blanding as well, if they aren't doing their own, to go into the program. So when the person gets the land use clearance or comes in for a permit that doesn't need it, ostensibly somebody goes to the computer, log into San Juan County's data, see where information's been given out or not given out, and then issue the permit. It's now morphed into they didn't get the computer system they wanted, so it's going to be more than the $1,000 a year that Kristen threw out. It's going to be, for us, to pay to log in, it's going to be substantially more, but they don't know how much because they haven't secured the contract yet with the computer program that they need. It's moved into including inspections because San Juan County will stop doing the inspections. So in a matter of 30 days, we moved from, hey, you're going to be doing these, Erin, and to we're going to be doing more and more and more of it. I would project that in the next couple of months, we will get a written contract that spells out what San Juan County wants to do, but I think we need to have a pretty serious discussion that if we are not going to be using San Juan County to issue permits and doing building inspections, then we need to do something. And that probably means either partnering with someone else to do particularly building inspections, or getting someone hired and trained, or already trained, to do those. And I don't know what the answer is. I do know what the answer was, is that we do not have Erin and 8 pieces to be able to do that. And
Also, you don't want me doing that. I'm good at details, but that's dangerous for everyone. So
I
just,
think it's really important if it's a building inspector that it's somebody who is very knowledgeable in the building field. I mean, we've got big insurance things that roll off of that, and
yeah.
right. And so we're not going to decide anything today because it's a moving target right now with San Juan County and what their expectations are. But it is coming at us. It is not It will come at us, I'm guessing, by the end of June.
Present state, are they still willing to do building inspections until it's
There's-
officially rolled off?
They are still doing them
Okay.
right now. And part of the explanation for doing it is, we all live here, we can see who's building without a permit. And Kristen gave an example of 4 or 5 houses that have been given land use clearances, but no building permit ever issued, so therefore no inspections were getting done, or minimal inspections. So the rationale really is financial for San Juan County. They want to get rid of this piece, and we need to figure out either we contract or hire. And one thought I had was reaching out to Blanding to see how they're doing it and what they might be willing to do to contract with us. But if everyone remembers, we do not have an amended interlocal agreement that covers in detail a number of these things that have come up because the commissioners did not approve it. So we're doing it all on a handshake and a promise with San Juan County Building Department, and that's how we got it set up. So there's nothing that ties them specifically to having to do this legally at all. So with that said, everybody think about what else we could do. Lou?
From planning and zoning, one of the things they discussed was they issue the land use clearance, and then it goes on to San Juan County. We say in there that they have to meet the dark sky lighting, you have to get a permit from them, you have to get those inspections, but then it never comes back. And so there was discussion on at the bottom of it, before you get your CO, your certificate of occupancy, you bring that back to P&Z. They see that the building inspector has signed off, has approved everything. You check to see if the lighting is actually dark sky lighting. You see that all that has happened, and then you sign off on it, so that we do have a say at the end. And that it never moved past that sort of like, hey, this should probably happen stage, but I still think it should happen. Still think there should be a start of it, and then see that, did you actually do all these things? You're building in our town, did you actually do this?
And that just probably makes the argument for San Juan County as to why we should be doing it, because we've taken the middle part and shifted it up here.
For an inspection, just for
They-
the inspection.
But they don't want to do the inspection.
Well, right,
Yeah,
right.
and they don't want to do the building permit. And so, while I agree with you, it's something that would have been nice to have had in there, and we can certainly ask planning and zoning to give us a recommendation on it, and we can pass it. That's the short fix for that piece.
Right.
The big fix is, what are we going to do in the future for,
With the middle part.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
but if
I-
somebody else, say somebody from Moab comes down and is their inspector, I still feel like when that is all said and done, it should come back to the town and say, hey, this place, this building was built with the inspections, it was all signed off, everything is in order, check, and then it goes in the file. Whoever's doing the building inspections, instead of that just sort of drifting off.
and that would be, I imagine, a part of a contract we'd either have with another entity that's already set up, or it would be the terms of employment for somebody here, what they would be doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But just cycling that back to P&Z is what I think needs to happen.
So be thinking about it, because this will be a piece we have to build into the budget, and it's a piece that and I don't know who is going to fly over the desk faster at the suggestion that Erin take this on, Erin or me. It was kind of like,
Well, no, you gotta have an inspector, somebody's gotta find an inspector, so I think that that's kind of a P&Z. Delegate to them to find inspectors and.
there are limited things that we can delegate to planning and zoning, and I think that employment or signing of a contract or creating a contract with
No.
another entity comes back to the
But
council.
what about just researching it, like who might be available and stuff, and giving us a recommendation?
Okay, just a thought.
So everybody think about
I
what,
like the idea of contacting Blanding and see what they, I mean, to see if they have a building inspector. I kind of think that part of the reason that San Juan County might be pulling back on this a bit is that there aren't a lot of building inspectors in the
Yeah.
area, at least a few years ago, the last time I dealt with San Juan County in building. they were having to have somebody come from Salt Lake to
Yeah.
do building inspection. And, I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
That's what I thought as well. They were already contracting it out last time
You
I
know,
talked to
I
them,
mean-
so we'll just contract instead of, okay.
Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna set that aside and find out where we are with San Juan County, what their time limit looks like, or their time frame. Or maybe they've reconsidered and they're just gonna let us do it with them. So it's almost 3:30.
Mhm.
I would say, I'm just looking at this. I would say of everything on here, it could be held over for another day, or, Erin, on the agenda, we did have a discussion of the CIB to
Yeah.
approve you.
Just really fast, so there's a virtual option, so unless it is very important that I attend in person, I would prefer a virtual option as opposed to dropping a price for 3 hours of a meeting. So,
That's number 8.
Number 8, yes. You don't need to approve travel, I'll just attend virtually.
So that's good to know.
And other people can join too, we can talk about CIB, but yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe at least one other person sit in on that.
So do you need, is it a fee to join it?
No.
at all? You just-
No
you just
registration
got-
at all.
Yeah,
No,
so you
just-
can just do it.
Yeah, as, up until yesterday, I thought I was gonna have to drive, but we're good.
Good, I like that. So if anybody else wants to join that meeting, let Erin or me know and we'll get you the information. I think that the most important thing to do right now, I think, is maybe just talk quickly about the first part of 5, discussion of protocol for the absence from town. It takes Linda time to find each of us who are here and who isn't, and I'm equally culpable for getting them to be gone for the day. But to the extent that we can help make everything easier, if we can all remember either to note it on the community calendar or call Linda and say, I'm gonna be gone for the day. The vacations and the longer things, we seem to be getting better on track with it. It's really only one person's in town to sign a check, and while that maybe could wait a day or two, it's kind of like Russian roulette for Linda, kind of going around to find 2 people. And if there is something pressing, and I'm equally responsible, if it's okay, starting with that second part, let's take a break. And do you want to take a break until 4 to our regular meeting and just table these, since we'll be discussing 9 anyway?
So can I make a comment on 5 or just a suggestion to?
Sure.
Okay. So I did mention earlier that the treasurer in our little book says that the treasurer needs to sign every check and keep track of all the stuff. So on this most, I think this most recent one, 2022, it's on page 47, that says that that's a treasurer's responsibility is to sign every check. Now, our town says we want 2 on every check, so checks and balances, so we have 2 signatures. So when I watched the last Bluff Waterworks, they've got a bookkeeper. I think Jenny both pointed that out, like, she's an actual bookkeeper. What she did was, they had a list of all the checks that were to be approved, and they went through them all, and they were all ready. She had them all set up, all written out to them, the amounts all filled in. Then there was a list that they approved. This is what we're gonna pay. And then the treasurer sat down and signed all the checks, and that, right at the meeting. And so that would save the chasing around. And then there's some checks so you could do that, like we meet 3 times a month, so you could have paydays on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday. And then those checks that are approved would then just be signed right then, and we wouldn't worry about who's in town or who's out of town, because there would just be the main one, and everybody else could be at the meeting and do it on that Tuesday, or left somewhere, because I think it's a lot of work too, because I'm really uncomfortable signing checks that haven't been on the list and haven't gone through for any amount, unless it's a routine P&Z, our manager, maybe maybe Rocky Mountain Power, you know, some of those bills that come in, I don't mind signing. But the rest, we pay twice a month, that's plenty of often. I don't think there's ever gonna be a rush that isn't on an approved check. And I think that might solve all of our trying to coordinate with everyone.
When we go to, you know, the waterworks every month, and they take turns signing checks. There's not one person there.
That part is true, but checks do only get signed once a month at Waterford. You know, unless it's an automatic payment, which we have 3 or 4 of, they, you know, I mean, nobody, you know, takes the checkbook around to get checks signed, but they are submitted in the packet at the meeting for approval and signature.
Okay.
So, and then.
But that's, you know, I mean, that's Waterford, we have a lot
less-
fewer
Mhm.
checks in there than the town of Bluff does. I mean, I think there might be 10.
So this is what our little town Bible says. It says the treasurer, or in his or her absence, a deputy treasurer appointed by the governing body must sign all checks prepared by the recorder or director of finance. Prior to affixing the signature, the treasurer or deputy treasurer must determine that a sufficient amount of funds are in deposit in the appropriate bank account of the city to honor the check.
So, you know, it kind of says the same thing under the clerk's part, that, plus in our procurement policy, that the clerk determines that there are sufficient funds.
And that the treasurer should know that, like you should show the treasurer that in there, you know, so you don't bounce a check, but, you know.
Well, and, you know, I mean, Linda and I do go over like bank statements once a month, so I, you know, I kind of have, when she was throwing out numbers, I was like, yeah, that sounds right to me. But I certainly don't, you know, log on to Zion's and find out, okay. I trust that,
Right.
and when we're at Waterboard, same thing. Steve doesn't check with Melanie or go log on to Wells
it's
Fargo and make
apparently,
sure. Yeah, you know, I mean, I guess.
But it's apparently your responsibility, like, but, you
So-
know, but that's not the big part, I just think it's important that we follow that.
I do think that if we could make it so, even if it was just once a week, we get together and say, let's sign checks, I think that would save you a lot of running around, and me a lot of, oh, the last minute, I have to go to Blanding for 45 minutes, or, you know, all of a sudden, whatever.
To deposit checks.
No, just, you know.
Because you gotta go, but you also
Yeah.
have to get them up there.
Well, no, this doesn't, no, I have to go to Blanding for
For
some
yourself,
total
okay.
personal, business-related reason
Right.
or something, and haven't had time to put it on the calendar or whatever. I did just block off all of my weekends on the calendar, which I'm almost never here on a weekend. But if we could do, you know, one set time, I think that would be easier on both of us. I don't know if it works, you know, I mean, I'm even good if we do it once a week.
So rather than changing how everything gets done in this meeting for the next 3 months while we talk about whether we need to get a bookkeeper, what we need to do to go into the next fiscal year, why don't, Linda, you and Jen talk about, like, what would work? So that it'll be getting the second signature.
Yeah.
That will still be whatever. And see if the two of you can work up something around where if Jen's gonna sign every check, you're still gonna need a second signature, and what's the easiest way to do it? And then maybe think through and talk with Jen about, kind of the process you use and why you use it the way you do.
Which I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do that,
yeah.
we meet.
And,
I-
yeah, and I'm, you know, I mean, I'm okay with how it's happening right now, but I feel like you do a lot of running around looking.
Well,
And
the-
looking for
especially
that
not being
every day.
able to text, because if you
There-
know, I'm
so-
really hard to find if you don't
The-
have me on your
yeah.
phone.
Yeah,
The checks are almost all approved that I bring around.
yeah, yeah,
And if something hasn't been approved that needs to, I don't send it.
right,
Till after our meeting.
yeah,
So, in terms of saying, I don't want to sign unapproved checks, that list that I give everybody is to inform you and the auditors what we're doing, and the public actually too. They can look and see it. So everything, pretty much everything on there is approved. But I need the flexibility in my life. I mean, I need to have like closure on things. I can't have this schedule that says, well, I'm gonna do this and this and this at this time, and then Lottie appears, or there's a chance for something else. So I think what we've been doing is working great, and I've been bringing the checkbook here because Britt has signed checks,
Right,
and signed
right.
checks, so I feel like what I'm doing works really well for me.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with you coming to me signing checks. I just feel bad if, like, like last week when you were running all over town looking
Yeah.
for me and I was.
Which would be, yeah, if you go to Cortez, it's not a big deal. Anyone
Right.
that is leaving overnight though,
Yeah,
we
so I have
really
tried
need to know.
I have tried to amend,
Yeah, and Erin's
on the
given-
calendar, that was,
Let me check that you've done it, because I don't see it
oh,
on the calendar.
you don't
so-
see it? Oh, I thought I did it.
Well, and
Take a look.
yeah, and that was a good description of how to get in there, because I.
Yeah, I think it's-
I think it's on your account.
Oh,
It's
maybe
probably
I
on
picked
your
the wrong
account. That's
calendar.
okay. It's a quick fix. Quick fix.
I'm gonna have to try to learn to do it. I do wanna make one comment, which is mostly for the public's benefit. I can't imagine the previous council or this council, any one of us signing the check that was in 6 figures to deplete our bank account and bounce everything else would like go, whoa, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So I feel fairly confident representing to the public that we have a process that works. We've never
Yeah.
bounced a check.
Yeah.
We've never had insufficient funds. We know ballpark where we are. Don't anybody worry about that. I do know that everybody would be screaming if they saw a 6-figure check that we couldn't account for what was happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's not gonna happen. Well, why don't we get a motion to adjourn and take a break till 4? If somebody would.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's 3:37. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?